Okay, so this is the first lesson of Unit 8, and this is about statistics. So today we're going to kind of review some of the things you learned in 7th grade, and we'll learn one new term, and then we'll also learn how to use our calculators to help us find a lot of these things. So you will, if you don't have a graphing calculator at home and you're doing this lesson at home, there is a link to a website that will act the same as a graphing calculator that you can use when you're working at home. So that will be right above this video. There's a link to a website where you can enter a bunch of data and it will tell you about it. So I will put that there so you have that. So the learning target for today is I can find the 5-number summary of univariate data. And then I can find the standard deviation and interpret what it means about the data. So those are the two things we're focusing on today. And a lot of the stuff we talk about today, it was something you probably learned last year or reviewed last year. So some of the notes, some of the important vocabulary or terms is the mean, and that means it's the average, so averaging numbers. The median is the middle number when the numbers are arranged from least to greatest. The mode is a number that appears the most. The minimum is the lowest number. The maximum is the highest number. The range is whatever the maximum number is minus the minimum number. The first quartile is 25% of the data. The third quartile is 75% of the data. The second quartile is also referred to as the median. Those are the same. And then the interquartile range is whatever the third quartile is minus the first quartile. So we'll review all of this in this first example. So the weekly salaries of 6 employees at McDonald's are 140, 220, 90, 180, 140, and 200. Find the mean, median, mode, minimum, maximum, first quartile, third quartile, and we're also going to do the interquartile range, just as a kind of a review. So the first thing I do, and a lot of this data has to be when the numbers are put into order. So I'm going to order them from least to greatest. So like 90 is the lowest salary, and as I order them, I like to cross them off. And then I have 140, but I have 140 twice. Then I have 180, and then I have 200 and 220. All right, so I need to find the mean, which is the average. So I'm going to add up all these numbers. Average is adding up all the numbers and then dividing by the number of numbers that I have. So I'm going to add up all these numbers. 90 plus 140 plus 140 plus 180 plus 200 plus 220. And I'm going to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's about 161.6 repeating. So that is my mean. My median is the number that's directly in the middle. So I'm going to do this by hand. So when I do by hand, I kind of cross each one off the end until I get to the middle. So 1, 2, and then my median is going to be if there is no middle number. So like there's 2 middle numbers here. That means I have to average them. So I'm going to do 140 plus 180 divided by 2 to get my to get my median there. And so my median ends up being 160 when I do that average. So 160 will be my median. My mode, so I did both those. My mode is a number that appears the most. So this would be 140. And because 140 happens twice, sometimes it doesn't have a mode at all. The minimum number is 90. That's my smallest. And my largest, my max, would be 220. Okay. And then the first quartile is kind of the number in the middle. So if directly in the middle would be here, split into 3 and 3, and then the first quartile is like the number in the middle there. So if I looked at the first half of the data and I found the middle, that would be 140. So quartile 1 is 140. and quartile 3 is 200. That's 75% of the data. So 25% of the data lies below 140, and 75% of the data lies below 200. So those are my two quartiles. So the actual range here is my max minus my min. If I wanted to find the range, I would do the max minus the min, which in this case would be 220 minus 90. And so my range would be 130. So that would be my range there. My inner quartile range, or IQR, would be quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So I'm end up doing a 200 minus 140, and that is actually 60. So my inner quartile range is 60. Okay, so that's kind of a review of all those different types of things you can find from a list of numbers. And so the next example, we're going to look at using our calculator to do this, because as you can see, it kind of takes a long time to do by hand. And if you have a ton of data, it's really going to be annoying to kind of calculate all those things. So I'm going to show you how you can do it by using your calculator. So in this example, we're going to look at the average number of days thunderstorms at 16 Canadian airports are given. And then it's all this list of numbers. So we're going to actually use our calculator. And there's a couple things you need to know about the calculator. So when you see an X with the little tail over it, that is referring to the mean or the average. N is the number of data points. So the number of numbers you're entering into your calculator. Q1 means quartile 1. MED means medium. Quartile 3, Q3 is quartile 3. And this new term we're going to learn, SX, is standard deviation. That stands for the standard deviation. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. But first, I'm going to show you kind of how to plug those numbers in your calculator. So if you go to your calculator and you kind of gives you directions, you're going to press stat, which is right under the delete button. And then you're going to go to edit. So you just press enter. And then it gives you a list of numbers. So you're going to enter all of the data. We're just going to use one list because we're only using one set of data. So I'm going to go up there and clear whatever's there and just press enter, and that will clear my list. And then I'm going to enter all of the numbers that they gave me. So I got to start over here with 5. So I'll enter 5, enter. So all I did was enter 5. Then I'm going to enter 10. And when you do this, you don't have to put the numbers in order, which is nice. The calculator does that by itself. So I'm literally just typing in every single data point so my calculator can calculate all these things for me. Oops. Okay. And so another thing I like to do is it says 16 Canadian airports, there should be 16 numbers. So my last number should be the 16th number I entered. So I always make sure those numbers match to make sure I didn't miss anything when I typed it in. So after you do that, you got your list. You're going to go to stat again. You're going to press that button stat again from the list. And then you're going to arrow over to calc. And then we want the one variable stats because we only have one variable we're talking about. It's just the airport. So I'm going to press enter. We want the first option. I'm going to press enter one more time. And then it gives me all of these numbers. So the first number, that X with a bar over it, that's the mean. So my mean is actually 16.25. And the calculator is going to tell me all these things. The only thing the calculator won't tell me is the mode. So that's, I kind of have to think about by myself, but that's easy. So I'm going to keep scrolling down, and it will, now you see the N, the min, the Q1, and then the median. So the median is 20. The mode, I'm going to look at how many times a number repeats itself. So I think it's 28. The mode is 28. The minimum, it tells you the minimum is 1. And the maximum is 28. And then it also asks for the first quartile and the third quartile. So first quartile is 5. Third quartile is 25.5. So those are two numbers. If I wanted to find the interquartile range, I would just subtract those two, so that would give me 20.5 if I wanted to find the interquartile range. Okay, so that was super fast. The calculator helped us out with that. So that's how you can use your graphing calculator for that. The next thing I want to talk about is standard deviation. So standard deviation is the average distance from any point from the mean. So that means it measures how far away, like, this number is from the mean, this number, this number, this number, this number. It calculates how far each number is away from the mean. And then it gives you like a data set. So the more spread out the data is, the larger the standard deviation will be. The closer the data is, the smaller the standard deviation will be. So if you have a big number, that means the average distance from your mean is pretty far, which means your data is going to be way more spread out. If your standard deviation is small, that means a lot of your points are clustered together, so they're all closer to the mean. Okay, so then in this one-var stats, it gives you the standard deviation as well. So if I scroll, I'm looking for SX. So SX is right here, and it says round to the nearest hundredth. So 10.24, well, actually round to 10.25. That's my standard deviation. So this means that all of my points, or all of my data, lies within about 10 of my mean. So this data is pretty spread out. 10.25 is a relatively big number. That means every point is about 10 numbers away from your mean. So that's what that means. If this number is pretty small, it means your data is going to be really, really close together. If it's really large, that means your data is kind of spread out all over the place. Okay, and so the rest of this practice is really just practicing using your calculator, finding those things, and then introducing standard deviation. So if you flip the page, you're looking at the practice here. I want to run over the dot plot part with you, and then everything else should be pretty self-explanatory. It's not a long practice. It's just the front and the back of the first page. So in this one, though, it gives you the dot plot. It says, a teacher asks his class of 20 students, what is your age? And the responses are shown below. So I want you to use your calculator for this. So again, you're going to kind of enter this data. So for 14, that means 4 students are 14 years old. So if I wanted to list out this data, 14 would happen 4 times. So this is what we kind of call a dot plot, which we'll talk more about later in the unit. But this, I just want to kind of enter my data from here into the calculator. So again, I'm going to go to Stat, Edit. I'm going to clear whatever is there, press Enter. And then I'm going to list this data. So I'm going to list 14 4 times. And then I'm going to list 15 however many times. So I'll list 15 whatever. At the end, I want to make sure I have 20 students in there. So 20 should kind of be in that little box or that little parenthesis there when you're done. And then once you've entered all your data, you're going to press Stat, and then arrow to right to Calc, and you're going to just, the one-var stats, you'll just press Enter, and that will bring you the stats for that number. That's not correct because I didn't enter all the data. So that's how you'll kind of do that. And then you can answer A and B like that. If you have any questions, let me know.